Okay guys, it's time for the fourth build in my Arcane Laboratory party. And of course I am still going to go over the teamwork strategy for these builds, as well as the roles for the three builds that I've already covered. But again, if you're only interested in this build, you can jump to this timestamp right here. So with this party, we want to buff our allies and debuff our enemies. We want to protect ranged allies, which this build will be a ranged build. We want to blast the heck out of our enemies, which this build will do very well. And we want healing options, which again, this build will cover very nicely. So, our Magus covers our burst damage, some of our different damage types, our circumstance debuffs, some of our dexterity-based skills, and of course, action economy manipulation. Our Magus also allows us to protect our more ranged allies like this build. Then we've got our Wizard, which covers our single target DPR, our status buffs, some of our status debuffs, our recall knowledge, and our ally protection. Third, we have our Gunslinger, which covers our single target DPR again, as well as our damage types, our charisma-based skills, and our status debuffs. This build can cast any spell in the game, as long as you have the right items, so it can cover anything a spellcaster can cover. That includes our burst healing, our multi-target damage, our different damage types, and this build can even target different defenses. This build also covers our in-between combat healing, our recall knowledge, and our wisdom and charisma-based skills. For today's heritage, we did roll Venom Tail Kobold. This will allow us to do poison damage to an enemy when we don't have the right spell for a situation. And when we run out of spells, which we might actually, we can still do good damage. Today's class is going to be the Thaumaturge, which of course means we get 3 implements. Starting with the Chalice, which of course covers our in-between combat healing. So we can give our allies temporary hit points during combat, or we can heal them for 3 hit points per level outside of combat. This combined with the medicine skill means our out-of-combat healing is definitely covered by this build. This also eventually means that we can get rid of status debuffs on our party members, which is going to help a lot. Our second implement is going to be our Bell, which can cover our status debuffs in addition to our spells. So we can always debuff our enemies even if we don't have the right spells available. Our third implement is going to be a Tome, which gives us extra skills. Thus we can take skills that aren't always useful, like survival and thievery, and we can change them every single day. For skills, your most important is going to be your crafting, as this build will use a lot of scrolls. Second, you're going to need medicine, because that's going to help with your out-of-combat healing in addition to your chalice. And of course, you're going to need recall knowledge skills. This build can also be really good at charisma-based skills, obviously. For your attributes, strength and constitution aren't going to be important for this build. However, you'll need just about everything else. Charisma, obviously, because you're a thaumaturge. Dexterity for your attacks and your defense, as well as intelligence and wisdom for recall knowledge. But intelligence and wisdom don't need to be as high because we have other party members that can cover recall knowledge, like our wizard. Charisma and dexterity need to be your highest, and wisdom as your third, because that helps with your will saves too. For this spell's ancestry feats, we're going to want to take feats that allow us to move around more easily so we can avoid our enemies. So our first level feats is going to be Scamper. So we can stride 5 additional feet if we are adjacent to an enemy, and we get a +2 bonus to our AC against any reactions that enemy has that are triggered by that movement. We can cast any spell in the game with this build, which means smart enemies are going to want to be in melee with us. And that means we need to easily be able to get out of that situation, as we don't want to be in melee with anybody in this build. Our first level class feat is what allows us to cast any spell in the game. With Scroll Thaumaturgy, we can activate any scroll that we find using our Thaumaturge class DC rather than spell DC. While we can't make scrolls yet, we'll definitely want to be on the lookout for them, as that's what this entire build is about. Root to Life allows us to stabilize dying creatures for one action, and we can also remove persistent damage if we spend 2 actions. This can really help our allies stay up, which is why we're taking it at level 2. At level 4, we'll be taking Instructive Strike. We are supposed to be doing at least some recall knowledge in this build, so this allows us to do a recall knowledge after we hit a target with a strike, which can be a ranged attack. And if we happen to get a lucky critical hit, we get a +2 bonus on the check. Again, we can cast any spell in the game as long as we have a scroll, which means we're going to want to know what our enemy's lowest save is, as that will tell us what spell to use, what scroll, if we have it. And we can do this even if we have Exploit Vulnerability up. So once we pick up this feat, using this and then using the right scroll will definitely help. Of course, we'll want to have Exploit Vulnerability up as well, which doesn't exactly help our action economy, but it is still a good option. So our first round, once we get this feat, should be something like this. Exploit Vulnerability, then use this feat with a strike, and then probably do something like Intimidation or Move. After that, we can start using our scrolls to cast spells, especially if we succeed on that recall knowledge. For our level 5 Ancestry feat, we're going to take Winglets. This allows us to leave 5 additional feet, and we can jump 10 feet farther than what we would normally be able to do with an athletics check, so long as we don't go over our speed. Not only is this another great way of getting away from enemies, but we're also going to need this to take Winglet Flight if we get high enough level, which of course is another great way of getting away from enemies. At level 6, we'll be taking Scroll Esoterica. This allows us to create temporary scrolls. At this level, we can make 1 temporary first level spell scroll. At 8th, we'll be able to create a scroll for a 2nd level spell. These can be any scroll of any tradition, making us a lot more versatile than any druid. And druids are already pretty versatile. At level 8, we'll be taking Know-It-All. This allows us to get more information whenever we succeed at recall knowledge. Thus, we can find out what our enemy's lowest save is, but we can also find out about his special abilities or anything else we want to know. So this can definitely help when we want to know more information, or the wizard simply fails at his recall knowledge. We are supposed to use recall knowledge at least some in this build, and this will definitely help with that. For our level 9 Ancestry feat, we're going to be taking Fleeing Shriek. This allows us to do a good amount of sonic damage to every creature within 10 feet of us. We can then stride, and our movement doesn't trigger reactions from any creature that fails or critically fails on the save against this damage. So now we can do damage, and we can also get away from enemies. We can only use this once per hour, but it is very effective. We do have to be careful about this though, because we can't hit our allies with this. But this is the feat we definitely want to pick up at level 9. And the last feat for this video is going to be Share Weakness. Effectively, this allows us to give our allies the benefits of our Exploit Vulnerability, assuming the creature has a mortal weakness. Thus, on that first round, we can do even more damage to the enemy. We won't be using this feat much beyond that first round, but it's very helpful for that first round. For free archetype, I recommend the Scroll Trickster or the Scroll Master archetype, giving you more scrolls, in addition to the Medic archetype, as this build is supposed to be a healer, and the Medic archetype will definitely help with that. And that's the build. This build can pretty much work with any party. It doesn't matter what the other players are playing, because this build can cast any spell in the game. It's a very effective build. But if you're using it with this party, I would highly recommend you focus on healing, as we don't really have that with this party at the moment. And of course, if you want a Google Sheet for this build and a bunch of other builds, you can check out my Patreon page. If you're new to Pathfinder 2e, I would recommend checking out my TikTok, as that's where I cover that kind of stuff. But if you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more Pathfinder 2e teamwork content. I'm having some business issues with getting paid on YouTube, so my next video will be on this channel, as well as my new channel, Team Player Gaming Plus. So it would be fantastic if you guys would go and subscribe over there, especially if you really enjoy my content. But if you guys want to see the rest of the builds in this party, I recommend you check out these videos here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, teamwork is vital. It helps us solve problems.